It would be so hard to go back home after everything happened and try to just live your life normally. I think that's partially why my family just chose not to really talk about it. They just wanted to leave it all in the past.
During World War II, Manzanar was an American incarceration camp in which Japanese Americans were held against their will in the name of national security.
I want to go to Manzanar because I don't think I know my own history that well. Both of my grandparents were held in camps when they were children.
My family didn't really talk about it growing up. Whenever I'd ask about it, my grandparents were too young to remember, and they said that they never talked about it with their parents.
My family was actually not in the camps. It was more like, just remember, this is also something that happened here in California, which I'm born and raised in California.
I want to come out of this, more knowledgeable, but also I want to come out of this with a greater understanding of what happened. I want to understand what it felt like and understand what they had to go through.
Something like the story of the camps, visiting the camps, being there, talking to people about it, amongst ourselves as Japanese Americans, understanding our own story is so key, because we're not going to be able to move forward if we don't know where we came from.
We're here, y'all. As here as we'll ever be.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. The evacuees cooperated wholeheartedly. The many loyal among them felt that this was a sacrifice they could make in behalf of America's war effort.
The air felt clean, but also like you were in the middle of nowhere, almost like placelessness.
It's torrid out here. Very hot.
It's a little hot.
Nice view though, all things considered here.
This amazing, amazing ranger comes to meet us, and she ushers us over to the barracks.
A lot of Manzanar is gone, so most of the original buildings are gone. Manzanar wouldn't even be here for us to visit if it weren't for the efforts of Japanese Americans who made the pilgrimage back to the site and then who successfully lobbied the government to preserve it.
These barracks have been rebuilt in the same spot that the ones were during World War II. The barracks here were 100 feet by 20 feet. When you got here, you were given an army blanket and a canvas sack. Actually better made than this, and told to go outside with a pile of hay and stuff it, and that was your mattress.
When you have people who are in the camps come through this barrack, what's the usual?
Their immediate reaction is, this is too nice.
There's just a bunch of Japanese/Japanese Americans that were squished into a very small space.
You guys are crazy.
Being like a teenager?
Yeah, I lived in the studio apartment, and when my mom and sister came to stay for a weekend, I was starting to lose my mind. I can't imagine.
Not comfortable. When they came here, how long were they told they were going to be staying?
They didn't know. The phrase was for the duration.
That must be tough to not be able to tell your kids how long they have to expect to stay.
I just kept thinking about the first night. Imagine the first night walking into this barrack. Imagine the first night with your suitcase just unpacked at the foot of your bed, unsure how long you're going to be there.
We went outside, and while we were on the grounds, we did notice that there were basketball courts.
This basketball court has been redone, but it is historically correct, and some of the rocks are where they were 70 years ago.
Seeing the basketball hoops there just proves that despite all the injustice and things that were being placed upon them, they didn't let it break their spirit. Ball was still alive, which is super dope to me.
We went into the visitor center, and that was really fascinating, obviously seeing all of the propaganda from the time.
It was from a nationally syndicated columnist who said, hurt him up, pack him off, and give him the inside room in the Badlands. Let him be pinched, hurt, hungry, and dead up against it. Personally, I hate the Japanese, and that goes for all of them.
It looks so big, the whole camp itself. What we saw was just one little section, but if you look at the overall one, it's just insane how massive this was.
The ranger took out these family records for those of us who had families that were put in the camps.
JJ.
Oh, that's so cool. This lists where the family is from. I always knew that my grandma's family was from part of California, and this lists where they're heading to, where after they leave camp, where they're going. And if you look at, this is all my family: Chicago, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. I mean, they made it there because that's where I'm from.
Seeing it on paper and seeing like the actual record, like that's like a piece of my family's history right there, you know, like an artifact.
Sean, I found both your grandparents' block addresses, which if we want to try to go see them, I would probably have better luck than you did.
So block 5 is
Is the one where Paul was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Paul is Paul's your grandfather?
Paul was my grandfather. Paul Takeo Bandai. Named for Paul Revere. He was born on the 4th of July. This is where my grandpa's barrack was when he was at Manzanar with his family. So, yeah.
Now you're here.
Now I'm here. Now I'm here.
This is a piece of a dish I found just next to, I have to put it back. But
They hadn't excavated the site, so our park ranger told us that the plate had probably been at that barrack site for over 70 years.
We're gonna put it back.
yes.
Take only photos, leave only footsteps. The morning before we went to Manzanar was the first time that my grandfather forgot my name. And so to be at Manzanar the next day and to see his barrack, I think for me it was like survivors at the camps can't be the only ones telling the story because they're fading. But for us to make sure that the lessons continue, we have to keep going back to the camps, whether literally or figuratively, because there's so much to learn.
It looks like, I really do think it was probably a sewer pipe.
This is definitely, I told you it was a sewer pipe.
Because the diameter is too big, so water coming in has to be in pressure, so you get those smaller lines.
I am probably holding a sewage pipe.
We went to the cemetery, and that was just very like peaceful and serene.
It's just covered in these like colorful like origami cranes, and there was this like windstorm blowing, and it was like blowing the cranes.
The whole thing in general was actually a lot more emotional for me than I thought it would be. I thought I would see it, you know, from like a historical perspective. I didn't expect it to affect me like it did.
And you learn something about a tragedy. The next step is sort of like, oh, what work can be done in order to apply the lessons from camp.
There's like this real danger that like this same rhetoric is gonna get out there and that people are gonna be arbitrarily like sent off for no reason.
Just imagine someone just telling you to pack your bag and leave right now.
It's nobody's duty to read every textbook and take every Asian American Studies course and learn everything. Just showing up, it's not like saving the world, but I think that it's by knowing more and by learning more and by gaining knowledge and then building a perspective, we're ultimately contributing to a larger consciousness.